Maseches Bava Metzia, Maseches Bava Metzia, Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis in the bottom of the page. Nun Tes Amud Beis. We are in Tonu Rabbonon. Line starts with the word Nin Olim. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or so lines from the bottom of the page. Nun Tes Amud Beis Bava Metzia. Nin Olim. And welcome to all our Torah Anytimes listeners. Stop, not yet. No, from Monday. I already learned how to do it. Hopefully, it's good quality enough for Torah Anytime. So, welcome to all YouTubers, all billions who want. Okay, yalla, let's go. I have to add a few things I want to add on the Agadah we saw last week, and that is what we saw on top of the page. I said it Baal Peh, but I'm going to say it now. That at the time of death of Rebbe Lezer by his deathbed was very, very frustrated that he was excommunicated his entire life. I want to point out that I don't think it was benidui, he was becherem. Cherem is worse than nidui. I think in English it's all the same word, but in halacha, nidui is one stage of excommunication. If the person doesn't listen, they put him in cherem. From the fact that Rebbe Lezer was very frustrated that nobody learned Torah from him, nobody taught him Torah, nobody learned Torah from him. He was especially angry with Rabbi Akiva, who was a close Talmud of his, saying, "You Akiva, I'm angrier with you," because Rabbi Akiva was relatively friendlier with him. But he said, "I'm angry with you because you are your heart is as big as a room, and you could have accepted my Torah. There's so much Torah I want to give. Frustrating when you give Torah and you have nobody to share it with. Yeah, such heilige ideas." But Reb Lezer was in Cherem because somebody benidu, you're allowed to learn with him, from him, and teach him. But Cherem is a higher darga in which you're not allowed to learn from the person or teach the person Torah. He can learn on his own, fine, good luck. Today it's easy, go online. But basically, I think it was Becherem. That's the main thing. Okay.
Rabbi Gamliel bore the brunt of.
Rabbi Gamliel died.
But it said the sages. It doesn't mention anybody else got punished.
No, you see, Rabbi Gamliel was punished because he died. No, it says Rabbi Gamliel died because he was the main instigator of the cherem. Oh, I want to point out something you asked last week. If you asked it as a question, I think it's a nice observation. Rabbi Lezer wanted to change nature, and yeah, Hashem took exception. At the end of the day, it was not a good thing, right? I mean, Hashem supported him, Ki'ilu, but at the end of the day, he was on the wrong side. He was Becherem, right? Rabbi Gamliel also wanted to change nature by saying to the wave, "Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, stop the wave. I'm doing it Hashem Shamayim." But here's the difference. Rabbi Lezer changes Teva and against Halacha, because Halacha was against him. While Rabbi Gamliel changed the Teva to save his life. That's not Oster. One is allowed to change Teva. I do it all the time, Like I get my teenagers to tidy the room sometimes, You change Teva. Yeah, that's, mamish like Kriyas Yamsuf. So, okay. Chachamim used to do it all the time to change nature, as long as it's within the limitations of halacha. Okay, Ellen, here's your answer. Let's continue. Tono Abonon. Now more about. We're done with the story. Good morning. We're done with the story, and we are now looking more at the prohibition. The prohibition of oinoas hager. The prohibition of annoying, disturbing, and being nasty to the ger, to put it simply. Tono Abonon. A me'ane is a ger. One who is me'ane, one who mistreats the ger, the convert. Over b'shloisho lavin. He's over b'shloisho lavin. There are 3 different lavins. Think about it. Yeah, if you have a ger in the area and you annoy him, you upset him, that's not 1 lav, but like a regular Israel possibly, or 2, but 3 lavin, 3 prohibitions. V'aloichtzoi over b'shnaim. Loichzo means if the ger borrowed money from you and you pressurize him to get the money back before the time, or when you know that the time is not yet up, that you pressurize him. You're over on 2 lavim by pressurizing a ger for money that he doesn't have. What are the 2? What's the difference between here you have 3 and here you have 2? Annoying him, upsetting him, telling him nasty things about his past. You're a ger, don't come to our school. You have this color of skin. You have this mentality. You eat sushi on Shabbos instead of a gefilte fish. What a terrible sin. I eat sushi on Shabbos. It's the latest trend. Yeah, okay. So, because I became from half a year ago. So, I am from. So, what's the difference? Frag the Gemara. What's the difference by me'ane 3 and by lilchot it's only 2? MISHNAH me'ane dichtivi shloisho lavin. By the me'ane, the Torah repeats the lav 3 times in 3 different ways. The ger lo toine, it says the ger do not upset. When a ger comes and lives amongst you, do not annoy him. There is a regular Isra no by any regular Jew. And guess what? The ger b'chalal amitohu. A ger is a regular friend. He's an amit. A ger is a regular Jew besides being a ger. Yeah, he's a kosher Jew for all intents and purposes. And therefore, what? Lamaisa 1 plus 2. You have 3 lavim. If so, wait a second. Why did you tell me that if you pressurize him for money, it's only 2? If you count that way, also you should have 3. If you pressurize him for the money, doesn't have. Ksivi, it says right? Lo tilchetzenu specifically about the ger, don't pressurize him. V'ger lo tilchatz again about the ger. V'lo tilo kenoishe, and there's a general isser again. If a person has money and you pressurize him, or you pressurize him before the time, you try to get the money out of him when he cannot. Then what? V'lo tilo kenoishe v'ger b'chlalu. That's a general prohibition about everybody, including Gerim, Kohanim, Levim, Israelim, Gerim, men, women, and Kurdistani. It includes everybody. Ella must be really, yeah. The brisa must be fixed. You got the wrong brisa, and really both. Think about it. So when you annoy a ger, it's 3 times, 3 times 3 lavim. Can you imagine people who don't accept gerim to schools, or people who annoy the gerim in any shape or form, or they don't like it that they live next to them because of the color of their skin? And this is what has been happening, unfortunately, in our nation. I think in both sides of the oceans, I've heard. I'm sorry to say. I mean, that's a terrible, terrible thing. And people care about the diktu kalocho, the smallest thing. They don't care about 3 lavim dorais. And if the ger goes home and cries, oh, what's going to happen to this menayel or this whoever? Yeah, Rahman al-Itzlon. And people, come on, you know, it's not pashut. So now, the ger b'chlal hu. 1 second. Both of them are 3. If you annoy the ger, it's 3 lavim. And if you pressurize the ger in monetary issues, nothing to do with his origin or his color or his mentality, you also over by 3 different lavim. Yes? Oh, wait a second. Rabbeinu. No. The Gemara in Yevamos says, Kashim gerim lisrol kesapachas. As we know from Ruth and Alocha Lamaisi, you're not supposed to accept gerim unless they really, really, really want. Because because at the end of the day, as we're going to see very soon, they're very likely to go back to the religion of origin. They're going to give up on 613 mitzvahs and a nasty neighborhood. And therefore, they're very likely to what? Be Jews off the derech. What did you gain? Mackenzie should better be Mackenzie Goy, or maybe keeping Shavim Tzvas Noach, than becoming a ger and then giving it all up, becoming another Chiloni. What for? And it happens all the time, unfortunately. You hear many cases. And therefore, that's one reason why it says Gerim to Bnei Israel are like a sapachas, they're like a tzaras, they're like an unneeded addition, as long as they're not Gerim, chas v'shalom, not afterwards. The idea is not to be megayer them unless they're really, 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 really sincere, extremely sincere. London-based, and I'm not joking. For a change, I'm talking positively. You see, I also say nice things about London. London-based, they're amazing. They do terrific work with Gerim. I think one of the best in the world. They teach them for 5 years, and they drive to the houses and this and that. They really, really teach them. They reject them many times. I know people Gerim were Megaber London-based, and they do a terrific job, and they reject many people. Those who are serious, I know the whole process that they go through, and that's proper Geras. Unfortunately, in this country, it's not so good. That's besides the point. Okay, good. Continue. Okay. Weiter. Meisivi. I was personally Megayer by Rabbi Elizabeth. She was Megayer me. In the first level. Weiter. CV. Okay. So now, Tanya Rabbezer Godel Oimer. Rabbezer Godel says, Mipnei ma hizira Torah belamed vav mekoimos. 36 times, I didn't count, I believe the Gemara. 36 times the Torah says about the ger. I mean, there are 3 clear lavim, or 6. There are other 30 times in which the Torah alludes to not annoying the ger. The Amrilo, some say b'memvav mekoimos. Wow. In other words, 46 times. What do you mean 36 or 46? Is it or isn't it written? Says Tosfos, there are 10 places between 36 and 46 in which the Torah tells us you're gerim in Mitzrayim. So when the Torah tells us, you yourselves were gerim, as we're going to see soon, don't be so snobbish and stuck up about the whatever colored ger from Africa because you yourself were gerim. It's also indirectly telling us not to annoy the ger. So either 36 directly or an additional 10 indirectly. And it says what? Began. All these times the Torah tells us again and again and again and again, one way or the other, not to annoy the ger. How we got the picture. Why does the Torah have to tell me so many times not to upset the ger? As I told you, Rabbi from the Yaakov, because he's easily goes back lesuro. Lesuro is like ben soire umoire. He goes back to his rebelliousness naturally because he has the other society waiting for him. You can say it about Baluchuva too. In other words, that Mackenzie was a very successful guy in the Catholic Church or in the atheist club in, I don't know, Harvard. Now he's becoming Jewish and frum. People mistreat him and go back to be a Chiloni now. That's terrible. That's why you have to be super sensitive to the ger because he's easily driven back to his roots, to his bad roots or original wasn't so bad. My dichtiv continues the Gemara to ask, what does it mean when it says v'ger lo toine v'lo silchatzenu? Do not annoy the ger and do not pressurize him. Ki gerim heisam be'eretz Mitzrayim. You yourselves were gerim. You too were converts in Eretz Mitzrayim. And here the Meforshim explain gerim be'eretz Mitzrayim doesn't mean converts. We were not converted. We didn't convert to being Egyptian to Egyptian religion. Ger is any person who moved from one country to the other. That's the idea. Yeah, a ger is a person who, moved from one place to the other place. Everybody in the room except for me. Yeah, I moved from Tel Aviv to Bet Shemesh. In other words, when people, it's a different country. It is definitely a different country. Tel Aviv and the rest of the country is a different country. So, not Tel Aviv. One second, I'll be with you soon. So when a person makes fun of an American Oleh Chadash, when a person makes fun of anybody who moved to a different country, let alone a different religion, he should remember you yourself were in Mitzrayim. Rabbi Nosson Omer, mum shebecha al tomer lechavercho. If you yourself have a mum, if you yourself have that blemish, that issue, that problem, you yourself were a ger, don't make fun of the new ole or the Baal Tshuva, definitely not of the ger, you yourself were a ger. I mean, I'm extending it. I'm not saying that's halacha l'maaseh, you shouldn't make fun of anybody. But especially a person who's not comfortable in his new place because he moved from one place to the other, especially the ger who came to bask under Tachas Kanfei HaShechina, to be under the Shechina, of course, you should remember that you make yourself look like a fool. You yourself are a ger, so I can make fun of another ger. Can you imagine me making fun of people who don't know math? Ridiculous, right? I'm saying, who are you to talk? Yeah. So, Mimela, be quiet, says the Torah. 1 second. This is what people say. The Zakif lays kifa bidyutke. If you have somebody in your family that was hung up straight, if you have a relative that was hung in the gallows, he got whatever tzliya, yeah, it's called in Italy. He was hung on the gallows, on the thing, not in the gallows, in the yeah. So then loy ne'emar lechavre, he shouldn't tell his friend zakif binita. Don't tell your friend hang up that fish for me. In other words, if you yourself have somebody hung in your family, so that should be a bit like, have the sensitivity to yourself and the family to be politically correct, white elephant in the room. Don't talk about it. In our family, we don't talk about it. You know that Jewish mentality? And therefore, yeah, it's sometimes it's the right mentality. It says the Torah, you yourself were a ger in Mitzrayim. Don't start now your grandson of Rosh Hashiva and grandson of a Rebbe. Don't feel yourself, on your high horse to make fun of the ger or the convert, I'm saying, or the Baal Tshuva or whoever, because you yourself, you are a ger as well as he is. So that's just stupid. That is foolish of you to talk like that. Up to the Mishnah, and I'm up for questions. Yeah. Good. Heilige Mishnah, second to last Mishnah of our Perek. And here we're talking about what's called in English Genevas Das. Yeah, Genevas Das, which means it's a subsection of a Noah's Momoin, but sometimes it's brought down with Noah's Dvorim. Basically, you don't completely lie to the person, but you do. In other words, you're not 100% honest in business. You make the person understand one thing, which is not true. You're not lying to him outright and you say, here is a kilo, and really it's, kilo minus 100 grams, yeah? No, it's really something that you let the person understand things the wrong way. That's generally how I think, what I think Genevas Das means. Let's see examples. Says the Heilige Mishnah. Ein me'alvin peros beperos. One should not mix fruit with fruit. Let me tell you right now, what's fruit in the Mishnah? Peros. Many times we saw that. Whenever the Mishnah says peros, pride and test, it means wheat. A note to Mrs. Greens. Yeah, very nice. Peros always means, unless specified otherwise, peros means wheat. So let's say a person wants, let's say I tell you, I'm going to sell you peros, meaning wheat, from the wheat field in the Negev. And all of a sudden, I mix with them from a different wheat field. In that batch, I mix and I sell you from a different field, right? Same quality, same everything. Afilu chadoshim b'chadoshim. Even if both types of wheat are of the same quality, you wanted from field X, and I'm mixing with it from field Y, that's not allowed to do. You may have your preference, maybe there is a bit of difference in the taste, in something. You want wheat X, you should get X and not Y, not from a different field. What do you mean even nuance with a nuance? Oh, here I want to tell you what I'm going to prepare you for the next sentence. Let's see it inside. Let's see the next sentence. Continues the Mishnah. Then tzarich loimer, needless to say, do not mix chadoshim b'yeshonim. Don't mix the new ones in the old ones, which means, say Rashi and Tosfos, which wheat is better? Think of the fact that wheat is something which, well, in most cases, you want to grind. The new wheat is very, very fresh and wet and moist. The older wheat, not old and crummy and musty, that is dried up and is better, crunchy, and can actually, not crunchy like your cereal in the morning, crunchy for your meal, yeah? And therefore, old wheat is better than new wheat. There's other arguments, but this is something they all agree on, yeah? And therefore, let's say you promised the guy, I'm going to give you old wheat, let's say, I don't know, 1 year old, and a little bit you mix here and there some of the new ones which are lower quality. Needless to say, those you do not mix in, obviously. There's a question about what? How about if you want low quality new ones are low quality, and you add some old ones, that's machlokes rishonim. Rashi would say, we can, I'm improving the quality. Other rishonim say no. Other rishonim say that mixtures are not always good. Even to mix a bit of the good together with the bad is not always healthy for the mixture. That's how they understood them. But Rashi is being straightforward. Rashi says the good ones are the old ones. Keep it 100% old and good, like wine. Yeah. And the new ones are not so good. If you want to add some of the old to the new, better. You're improving. That's better. That's what Rashi learns. Continues the Mishnah. Be'emes omru. What's be'emes omru? They really said. The Gemara is going to say, what do you mean they really said? Is this a Sem girl talking? Really? Yeah, what's the Mishnah telling you? Be'emes omru, they really said, what did they really say? B'yayin etiru, in wine, let's say somebody asks you for wine, b'yayin, and you want to mix two different wines together without telling him, b'yayin etiru le'arev kosher berach. They allowed the wine seller to be me'arev, to mix in his cocktail of wines, le'arev, the hard wine with the soft wine. How does the article help us? I think kosher means strong and mild. Okay, fine. I thought runny and thick, but okay, strong and mild. Article, Piyashchina. So the Arab kosher berach. So now the kosher, the hard one, I call it, I translate it as it is. The hard wine is not, according to Rashi, is not as good as the soft one. Yeah. In other words, the soft one is actually no. I'm mixing Rashi and the Rosh. I knew it's going to happen. The Rashi learns that. There are two pshatim in my mind now. I'm going to focus on Rashi. Rashi says like this: don't mix the hard wine, yeah, the strong wine with a mild one. Why? Because the kosher, yeah, is etiru. Sorry, they allowed it. Because I have the Rashi and the Rosh together in my hand, I get mixed up. Let me stick to Rashi. Restart. They allow you to mix a little bit of hard wine, strong wine, in the mild one. That's allowed. Why? Rashi probably assumes that the strong one is better. That's why it's allowed. Etiru, it's allowed. Because it improves it. Mashenken says Rashi the other way. No. Because in other words, Rashi learns that the rach, the mild one, is not as good. The strong one is better. A bit of strong is good. But to add mild to the strong, you are actually lowering the quality. So don't do that. That's what Rashi learns. Let's stick to that. There's an interesting Rosh, but I want to just stick to that. Maybe you'll say the Rosh later. In other words, according to Rashi, it's very, very simple. Yeah, the strong one is better, so you can mix the strong one with the soft one, not the other way around. You may ask what's the chiddush, by the way, but that is something that's allowed to be done. Even that, you'll see the chiddush in the Gemara, is not always allowed to be done. Sometimes you can do it under certain conditions. In other words, you can take better wine and put it in the not so good wine. You may ask what's a chiddush. I'm just doing him a favor. The Gemara will discuss that. No questions for the next end. We're not Lamaisa Halacha. We'll get to it after the Gemara. They're not the same. No, it's not diluted. It's not diluted. I think one is just stronger, thicker. The other one is milder. I don't think it's not just. I think so. Yeah, more fermentation. Different. I think so. Yeah. No, he was not told it's a mixture. Thank you for asking. Better. No, if categorically, objectively, not subjectively, if objectively it's really better and everybody knows it's better, you can mix it. You don't have to tell him. The whole vote is without telling him. Yes, I should have said that. The whole vote is without telling him. Why? Because it's nice. It's better for him. So is the assumption. The Rosh learns otherwise. Now, it's all this is without him knowing. Yes. Continues the Mishnah. More about wine. From now till the end of the Gemara, the Mishnah is almost still all about wine. One is not allowed to mix the sediments of the wine with the wine. But you are allowed to mix them. Yes, that is what the Gemara says. The Gemara claims that there's an open steer here. In other words, first of all, we assume that we're talking here, as we saw a few dapim ago, if you remember, about if somebody has wine in a nice clear glass, whatever container, the person doesn't see the sediments. I'm allowed to sell him the wine with the sediments and actually stir them up and have some sediments given, as long as that's accepted without him knowing. Because as long as I'm not some French connoisseur, I'm not supposed to sell him dafka pure wine. Wine is supposed to be the sediments, and that's okay. On the other hand, the Mishnah contradicts itself. The Mishnah says don't mix, and the Mishnah says do mix. The Gemara will deal with it very, very nicely. Weiter. I'm not giving you the answer. There will be the Gemara. We have to keep some suspense here. Mishnah is arev mayim beyenoi. Let's say now a third case. Up until now, we had wine with wine. We had sediments with wine. Now we had water with wine by mistake. Mishnah is arev mayim beyenoi. Oi, my wine, all of a sudden, I don't know, somebody poured some water, my child poured some water into my wine that's for sale. What do? Loim kerenu b'chanus. There are two ways to sell wine. One of them is the chanut. You think chanut means a shop in Hebrew? No, yeah, it does. But chanut also means a bar or a pub. In other words, chanus is a place where people come and they buy the wine by the drink. In other words, they buy it by the pint, by the cup, by the glass, and the drink there. It says it many times in the Gemara. So if you, what? In the pub, I said, in the pub. Yeah, in the pub. Oh, ask the Englishman. Yeah, so in the bar, in the pub, if you want to sell it over there, don't sell it in the chanus, elam kenoidioi. As long as you're in control, you are the bartender, you are the bar owner, however it's called in English, yeah? So then you're allowed, what? Barkeeper, right? There's not a word in British English. So then what? You're allowed to sell him with the water, as long as you tell him that it's diluted. You tell each and every customer, hey, you, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Samantha, whoever comes to the bar, you have to tell them what this is diluted with water by mistake. Take it or leave it. Oh, let's say you want to sell it to a to a barkeeper, or you want to sell it to a bar to somebody who sells the wine. Him, you should not sell him the water diluted with the wine diluted with water. Even if you tell him, hey, Mr. Wine seller, you should know that it's diluted. It's not going to help. Because he will cheat the others. Are you in charge of what he's going to do with them? Yeah, from your end, he is muchzek to be a ramay. Because a lot of tagorim, as we saw, the ramayim. Who's the tagar of the wine? The barman, the barkeeper, yeah, the pub guy. And therefore, this guy, don't sell him diluted wine, because then he will sell it on to others and let them drink the diluted one without telling them. And you will charge them full price, or so at least we suspect him. That's what the muchzek to do, and therefore don't do that. I never entered a pub in my life, so I don't know, but the Mishnah says that they tend to lie over there. What happens if it's normal? It's accepted to mix water with the wine. Then yatilu, then you're allowed to do that, because as we said about 500 times, Choshen Mishpat is flexible, is dynamic, depends on minhag hamakam. If it's normal to mix, as long as it's really normal, people all know about it, it's accepted and you can do it. Hataga. Here comes the final halacha here. Hataga. Again, the taga over here is some kind of wholesaler. And no, not necessarily. He buys from many places. Hataga noitel mechamisha gronus. A tagar is a person who sells, tagar could be all kinds of tagorim. The tagar over here is a tagar who sells wheat. He sells wheat from 5 different granaries. One from the Golan, one from the Galil, one from Bet Shemesh, one from the Negev. Yeah, 5 different fields completely. It's okay to give them, to collect from many different sources. Wow. Although he puts it in his barn, in his granary, and people may think, oh, he has good quality wheat, because we know that the stuff that grows in his field, in a tzora, somewhere nearby, he has good wheat. Really, he gets them from many different places, and he doesn't have to tell us why, because people naturally know. People know that the teva, the norm of the tagar, is not only to sell his own produce from his own field. It's extremely common for him to sell from other places of very different qualities, high quality, low quality, and therefore that's called accepted, and it's not considered that he's lying to anybody, because people know, even though it's his thing, he does get to many other places. One example comes to mind. There was once in a shoe shop, and they are the outlet, big outlet of an Israeli company, but they also had other companies. Most of it is from them. They also sell from others, and people know. Okay, there it says in the box each make, but it's still fine. Soon we'll see the exception to the rule. Continues the Mishnah. Mechamesh gitos. What about if he sells wine? He can sell wine from 5 different wine presses, Bet Shemesh, Galil, Golan, wherever. And he puts it into his own one big jug, into the big jar, the big jug, the pitom. As long as he doesn't play games. What's playing games? Let's say that person somehow gives you the feeling that all of his schayra is from one place. Well, really, it's not. Then it's a problem. For example, I saw it in Shulchan Aruch Action. Let's say that person, 80% of what he gets is from good quality place, let's say, and the meal 20% is from low quality, and he doesn't tell you anything. In other words, yeah, you have the feeling that everything there is from the good place, and really it's not. So that's a very darkistic thing. That's Gnevas Das, and that's a big nisayon. In other words, people have the understanding that 100% of his choira is from the good place. Well, really, some of the places he gets are not, and it's not even. If everybody knows he gets from 5 different places equally, then fine. Good, bad, we know, well, different qualities, potluck, whatever you get, it's all mixed up together. But if he gives you the understanding that he usually gets it from one place, and there's still other low quality places, and people don't know. People think it's all from the good place. That's a problem. That's Gnevas Das. Even if he didn't say it outright. Even if, we see trucks going there, we see it has a big sign, the best quality, and 20%, 30% is of the lower quality. Oh, that too is Gnevas Das. He has to let people know not everything in my shop is the creme de la creme. Whoa. Okay, inflation of fingers. Let's rub my parents first. No, don't think so. Holy Gemara. Says the Mehelig Gemara. Tono Bonon. We're talking now about mixing the old wheat with the new wheat. Which one's better? The old one. If you sell, in other words, if you mix new ones into the old one, assuming they're all old and good, and really there's some new ones which are not as good, right? That's bad news. Don't do that without telling the guy there's a percentage. If you tell him, life's good. If you don't tell him, that's called Genevas Da'as. Tonobon, it says the Braisa. Which one's more expensive? Which one's more? 4 or 3? 3. Why? No, I'm not that bad. 3 is more than 4, which means 3 is if you can get for 100 shekels 3 kilos, yeah, that's more expensive than 4 kilos for 100 shekels. Of course, right? You get less, more expensive each one. Okay, so that's what we mean. 3 is more than 4 in here. You can get more for the same amount of money, or less for the same amount of, let's say, 100 shekel. Needless to say, says the Braisa, that if the new one is cheaper and the old one is expensive, which makes sense because it's better, of course, then me'arvin. That's not even a chiddush, right? What does Mishnah want to tell me? Of course, Mackenzie knows that too, or the American government. Of course. Elamai. The Chiddush is afilu chadoshes misholosh v'yishonos me'arba en me'arbin. Let's say from some reason, which we'll soon see, let's say from some odd reason, I'll tell you soon why. Let's say the old ones are cheaper and the new ones are more expensive. Nagid, still don't mix them, which means if he assumes that it's all old, don't give him the new ones, even if the new ones are really more expensive. What's wrong? I'm helping, I'm adding for the good one. Answers the Gemara, punchline says the Brisa, which means don't tell me what I prefer. If I asked you for what? If I asked you for, let's say, yeah, old ones, I want the old ones. The new ones are more expensive. You know why the new ones are more expensive? Because in that place, people prefer buying a new one because they want the aging process to happen in their granary. They're planning, I assume, like good Americans, what they're going to do next year. They want to grind it next year. They want it to age. I'm just saying a year. The Gemara doesn't say that. They want to age by them. And that's why the Dafka asks you for what? For new ones. That's why normally in that place, in that situation of the well-planned people, they like the new ones, not because they're really better, because that's their time plan. But She'enkin, my guy, the guy who came to my store and asked me for old ones means he wants to grind them right now. He wants them nice and crunchy and old and cracky and crunchy in order to right now do it. Oh, if you give him what? If you'll give him now the new ones, that's not good. For him, the new ones are not worth more. For him, the new ones are bad because those new ones, if he wants to now actually grind them, there will be too soft and mushy and yachi and baki. And therefore, don't play games with what he wants. If he told you he dafka wants old ones, never give him new ones. Even if the new ones are really more expensive, it's because it's expensive because many people like to age it by them. But if he's asking you for old ones, no, he doesn't want it to be aged by him. He wants to use it right now. And therefore, don't play with people's minds. You are asked for old, give old, and don't give new. We're North Korea. It's 10 minutes in of the Shiur. It's a bit ridiculous. Says the Heilige question 1025. It's been more questions than Shiur up until now. They really said. Yeah, one's allowed to mix the hard wine, the strong wine, in a mild wine because it makes it better. Let's say that the hard one is better, whatever the tougher one is better. What's be'emes omru? They really said. What does it mean? Really said. Amar blozo ada omro on here hada on that Mishnah we said the statement, and you should know the statement for all over Shas. Call be'emes omru. Whenever the Mishnah says be'emes omru, they really said. What do you mean they really said? Halacha, that's halacha, and nobody argues on it. Explains Rashi very nicely. Just like over here, it's a reality that the strong wine is better than the mild one. Nobody argues on that. It's a reality in Metzia, and Mackenzie McKinley also know. Metzia's the thing. So too, when the Mishnah in Shabbos Daf Yud Aleph tells you the Emes Omru, that the Chazan, that the teacher of the babies of the children can look up with them on Shabbos with the Or Aner, right? You're not allowed to read Shabbos with the candlelight. But if the Rebbe of the Cheder is Mashgiach, you can. That's not reality. It's halacha. It says that be'emes omru. Yeah, in Daf Tzadi Beis Amud Beis it says over there. Be'emes omru isha chugeres b'sinar. A woman can wear like an apron that goes from back to front to back because it's all considered or not allowed to. It's considered carrying. Yeah, be'emes omru. What is be'emes omru? Just like over here, there's a reality nobody argues on. So too, those cases in Shabbos and in Sukkah and other places, it says be'emes amru, it means to say that part of the Mishnah nobody ever argued in all the times of the Mishnah. And some say, I saw in a different place, it's halachah Sinai. But it's so muskam, so agreed upon, even to the times of Moses in the Bible in the Mount Sinai. Omar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, and this Gemara will answer many of the questions you had. I am answering your question. Omar Rav Nachman, ubein agitois shonu. Oh, one can ask what's the chiddush, you tell him, you don't tell him, how are you doing it? One simple answer for everything. Rav Nachman minimizes, Rav Nachman basically constricts the Mishnah, qualifies the Mishnah to say as follows. Bein agitois, when the wine is still fermenting, in the middle of the fermentation process, in the making, yeah, when it's in the gas, in the wine press, then you're allowed to mix the good one with the bad one, and the Rosh says otherwise. You can mix whatever you want, not whatever you want. You can mix the good only when they're still in the making of receiving their unique taste and flavor and smell and aroma. But after Benegitos, when each one to his own already has his own aroma and flavor and everything, you're not allowed to mix them at all. Even Keilu, the good one to the bad one, you're not allowed to mix them. By the way, the Rosh, which I keep mentioning, and I'm telling you, the Rosh is Mechadish more. The Rosh says it's the other way around. The Rosh says that the hard wine is bad, but a little bit of bad wine, the kosher to the rach, is good. Yeah? Get what I'm saying? Yeah, you don't like to eat salt by itself, right? But a bit of salt in the salt is very good. That's more or less here. The Rosh learns that the kosher is not as good, but a bit of kosher in the good rach one is actually good. Give it a bit of body of kosher. Yeah, that's what the Rosh holds. Yeah. So Lemaisa, whoever holds what, the mixture, the blend, as you call it in English, is okay as long as each one didn't acquire his own separate taste. Once there's a separate taste, they don't match. They don't match together. They don't blend well together. Yeah, they're not good with the taste. It's not matim. Did you ever try to know pineapple with I don't know with ketchup? It just doesn't go together. Yeah. In other words, that all therefore it's limited, and that's halacha. Now, will it taste it or not? Doesn't make a difference because you ask guys, is he going to taste it? He doesn't have to know. He will taste it and not won't tell the difference. Like Pepsi and Coke. Yeah, you can't tell the difference, and therefore it's okay. Benagitos, it's all one taste. It's going to blend together nicely. But nowadays they do mix it not benagitos. They mix the different wines even after the gitos when the wines are more separate. Each one has his own unique taste. Yeah. Says Rav Papa, they know, and they're Michael. Nowadays people know that it's normal in the times of Rav Papa. Rav Papa was a beer maker. Rav Papa says, not my clients, people know that the wine seller tends to mix the wines. You don't have to tell him every time. It's a known thing in the market. It's accepted that that's the way it goes. So I don't have to inform them every time again. Rav Ika answers a different answer regarding the Mishnah. It's back to the Mishnah itself. Oh, Mani, you know who's the master of our Mishnah that says you can mix them together? Rabbi Acha Breda of Ika. Rabbi Acha, it's Rabbi Acha. Rabbi Acha matir b'dovar nitam. Oh, you people should be happy. Rabbi Acha allows anything that the person may taste. And soon we'll see, and the Shulchan Aruch says, if each and every person coming to the shop tastes it first, then I don't have to tell him, even though it's Achar Agitos. He says there's no difference between before and after, and I don't have to tell him. If this is something which is offered as a taste, and the person may taste, and I offer him to taste, I don't have to tell him, I don't have to stand there like a nice, service giver and say, it's a mix. I don't have to tell him. As long as he can taste it. If he tastes it and says, oh, that's grand, that's nice, it's a terrible mixture, he tasted it. Goodbye, go home, don't complain afterwards. And halacha, both are right. Both are right. Halacha, check Shulchan Aruch yesterday and today. The Shulchan Aruch says, either you can mix the wines if it's done early enough when the blend can be nice, depends on the wines, but early enough is good, or you can even do it later if you allow each and every person to taste from the wine. And then you don't have to tell them. Otherwise, my dear friends, you're right. If it's too late and nobody tastes it, or some people taste it, then you have to tell them. You have to tell the people, you're obligated to tell your clients, your customers, listen, people, this is a mixture of, post-fermentation. I mixed two separate wines here, and I have to tell you, you're not tasting it. It's a closed bottle. Just you should be aware that it's mixed. So one of the three options, either tell them, or they'll taste, or it was mixed or blended early enough. Okay? Weiter. One's not allowed to mix the sediments of the wine in the wine. But he does give him the shmorim. He does give him the sediment. The Reisha says you're not allowed to mix them at all. So how can the Sefer say I'm allowed to mix the sediments with the wine? By the way, mixing is not mixing. In English, you would call it stirring. In other words, the shmorim, the sediments are in the bottom of the barrel. I'm allowed to stir a bit, and give him the wine and scoop up some wine from the top of the barrel after some sediments are there. I'm not supposed to be the one staying, like the underdog with all the sediments in my chovis. It's part of the one. We discussed it in the past. It's lying. It's not lying. The Mishnah decided wine doesn't have to be pure. If you write in your store, I'm selling pure wine and I'm the French connoisseur, okay, that's different. Regular wine, unless known otherwise, unless maybe in different countries, different times, it's different. The Mishnah says wine may contain the sediments, and it's okay, even that cup of wine you give him. But the Mishnah itself contradicted itself, because it says you don't mix them. So do you mix them or don't you mix them? And the Gemara wants to suggest something and reject it. The tema, if you want to offer, suggest, and tell me, my noisen shmor of the kamoidale. Oh, guys, maybe the permission to yes mix the shmorim is providing you tell him, you actually inform him and you tell him, listen, to mix the sediments with the wine, you're not allowed. He thinks it's pure. If you let him know, then it's okay. There'll be a nice solution. Just be honest. Tell him, listen, mister, you don't see exactly what's happening right now. You should know I mixed it with the shmarim, and then it's okay. If so, that could be a nice solution. But no, the style of the Mishnah doesn't allow us to read that way. Hamidektani, first word lan. Hamidektani seifa. It says in the seifa about what? About the diluted wine with water. That's the worst one. Don't sell it in your own bar, in your own pub, unless you tell each and every customer. Look at Chofetz Chaim told each goiter, he told each customer if there's a problem. Yeah. So unless you inform each and every customer, don't sell it. If you sell it to a barman, to a wine merchant, don't sell him at all the diluted one. He may cheat them, right? Okay, wait. So when it comes to water and wine, there's a lot of talk there about yes informing, no informing, and that's kind of missing. But the first part of the Mishnah that spoke about the sediments ignored it, right? We didn't speak about informing. When the Mishnah wants to talk about yes, no, inform the customer, it does it very well. And in the Reisha, about sediments, it didn't say it. Michlal, that is to say, end of wide line. The Reisha, in the Reisha regarding the sediments, Afal Gav delay, it's allowed. The part that is allowed to mix the sediments is okay, even if you didn't tell him. How come? I'll tell you exactly why. Hachikomer. This is what the Mishnah says. Nothing to do with informing. Nobody here is an informer. Hachikomer. Ein me'arvin shmorim shel emesh b'shilim. What's emesh, by the way? Anybody know the word emesh? No, that's shilshom. Yesterday night. In modern Hebrew, it's yesterday night. Emesh is yesterday night in modern Hebrew, and in the Gemara, emesh means yesterday. Emesh means yesterday night. Yesterday night. Shilshom is the day before yesterday. Shilshom is the day before yesterday. Emesh is the last night. Many things except arguments. It's not one of them. Sorry. Emesh is etmol balayla. It's last night. Bekitzer. Fine. Sorry, that was your moment of Hebrew. Yeah. Emesh. Okay. Emesh. Emesh raiti oto. I saw him yesterday night. Bekitzer. En malvin shmom shel emesh b'shel yom. Don't mix yesterday's sediments of yesterday's wine with today's wine. The sediments from yesterday's barrel, made yesterday, fermented yesterday, don't mix them with today's wine. Velo b'shel yom b'shel emesh. Don't mix today's with yesterday. Says Rashi, Mechavrusa with Mechaven. It's not just about yesterday and today. It's very simple. You have 2 barrels of wine. Don't mix the sediments of one wine with the other. Let's say you feel like a fryer. You scooped up from wine X. You have barrel X and barrel Y. Barrel X, not barrel wine, barrel Y. Barrel X has it. You gave him all the pure one. We're fryer. Gave him all pure. I'm left with the sediments. So what are you going to do now? Mix what from X into Y. That you're not allowed to do. Why? Because that ruins the taste. To leave the sediments in the same wine, in the same sediments, and mix them and stir them up and serve them in the cup with the sediments is okay, as long as the sediments and the wine are from the same barrel. From 2 different barrels? No, even if they're both from today. Just an example yesterday and today. Aval b'shelemesh. Aval noisen u'shmorov of its own thing. You're allowed to give from the barrel may contain and even stirred up on purpose sediments from the wine itself of its own sediments. That's the mixture. Homemade, all homegrown. But from one barrel to the other, that's taruvet. It's like, basa b'cholov, osur. Tanen amiyachi, a brisa that supports that. Shoife means a person like shefi. Chef is somebody who pours wine slowly, elegantly, slowly, like you pour wine from one bottle to the other to your friend. He should lo ya'arv shel emesh b'shel yom V'lo shel yom v'shel emesh. Don't mix different days with different barrels. Aval me'arav shel emesh v'shel emesh, v'shel yom v'shel yom. You're allowed to mix yesterdays with yesterdays, today with today, which is not really mixing, it's stirring. You're allowed to stir up the shmarim of the same barrel. That's not called lying. Again, as long as it's normal, the Mishnah supports the standard to be wine may contain sediments and finished. That's the way it's sold. Now, one more, and then we even have time for questions. The last but not least is the story, and there's one more little thing. The mixture of wine with water. That's the worst one, right? Water, diluting the wine. That's not normal. And it happened by mistake. Of course, you shouldn't dilute unless it's accepted and known. But if it was diluted by mistake, well, water was diluted into my wine, or we'll see, I did it for my own use and then I sold it. If you sell it to other people, you have to be very careful. You either inform each and every customer, and if you sell it to a seller, don't sell it at all, even with informing him. He's going to lie. How do you know that he will not cheat other people? I want to ask you a quick question. Why do I care? And it's not a stupid question at all. If, let's say, nobody here in the room, let's say I know a bartender, barkeeper, bar owner, yeah, and I want to give him the what? I want to give him the selling the diluted wine, right? I'm not allowed to do that, even if I tell him it's diluted, because how do you know he'll inform them? I don't know if he's going to tell each and every customer. He may lie to them and charge them as if it's full price, and they may not know that it's diluted. They're not such connoisseurs, but they will be upset. Why is that not allowed? Another note to the Rebbetzin, very good. It's not because they care about the other customers. They're not my customers. There's a gvul. But because they know he tends to be a liar, it's too much of a temptation for him. So to give him a gun to his hands, to give him diluted wine to his hands, yeah, it's like giving marijuana to the drug addict. It's lifnei iver. That's lifnei iver. That's making him sin. And that's the reason it's not allowed. And now we're going to see a very, very interesting halacha and geder in lifnei iver. Let's see. Says the Gemara. Story time. I just said that. Rove. Story time. Rove. Aisu le chamra michanuta. They brought him wine from the shop, from the bar. No pint, thing, whatever, a jug. Mazge. Mazge means what? He diluted it with water, because that's what he wanted. Tame. He tasted it. Lava bosim. It wasn't tasty. Wasn't nice. He didn't like that wine. Shadre lechanusa. So now he sent it back to the chanut and he sold it back to probably another chanut, diluted, and he sold it to a barkeeper. How come? Excuse me, Rava. Abai is questioning Rava yet again. We learned in the Mishnah, even if you tell the Tagar this is diluted, that's not good. Why? Because really he may lie to the other people. So how do you Rava do that? Omerlei mazga didi, my mixture is so diluted, so didi made the idea. People notice it right away. He will not be able to cheat his customers because everybody knows that diluting was so diluted, so runny, so watery that really everybody can tell. He can't lie even if he wants to. Yeah, the norm is 1/3. Says Tosas 1/4. There's a question. In other words, their wines were much stronger than ours to begin with. It was a crude. It was like a raw wine. That's what's called in the Gemara, yain chai. So in yain chai, you have to give 1 yain/3 cups of water. Why? It's like the petal of the Israelis. You know the petal? Petal. No, it's like the concentrate, the fruit syrup. Yeah, petal. Tarkiz. We call something else. Tarkiz. Okay. Okay, Budweiser. So then that's wine, but Rava would mix it with more water. Everybody knows that this is diluted, and he, the barkeeper, as big fat liar as he may be, he can't lie because everybody can tell. So now Zog the Gemara big yesoid. Wait a second. Maybe the bartender will add more wine. Yes, but still worth it for him. He'll add a little bit more wine. So it's not obvious. And yet, not obvious. He's still gaining, still some water. He's still gaining some to make it the right, diluted enough So they should notice, but diluted enough that it's still a lie. Why aren't you choshish to that? Answers the Gemara, Im ken in dover soif. If so, there's no end to it. It says Rashi, Ashtikos sarcastically says Rashi, if so, don't sell a bartender water. Maybe he'll mix the water with wine. Don't sell him anything. Don't sell a chiloni. You're a Haredi, very from shopkeeper. Don't sell a chiloni a bag of milk. Maybe he'll mix it with meat. Don't sell him anything. Maybe they'll cook it on Shabbos. Yesh lo dover soif. The Mela says Rashi, only something that's ready made for Avera. Yeah, it's mamish like the Poret smartphone. I don't know, whatever. It's ready already for the Avera. It's a cheeseburger. It's a thing itself that's osur. Mamish osur right there and then, without him having to do anything. That is something that's not allowed to be done mitzad lifnei iver. But if it's something that he may, in his own fertile imagination, start all kinds of combinations, that's not lifnei iver. Yeah, I'm not a halacha shiur, but that's an interesting guideline for lifnei iver. Before we finish, an interesting story. I would have said it's shtuyot, but I heard it from a very choshev Jew, very, very, very choshev Jew, who quoted an old Yerushalmi choshev Rov from once. Interesting point. I'm not saying this; it's just an interesting thing for lifnei. Very interesting question. He said in old Yerushalayim, before all the tourist industry was so developed, there was a frum Jew, I think maybe from Asharim, he wanted to open a hotel. So that Rav said, don't open a hotel. Why not open a hotel? Koshal Mehadrin. He says, you don't know if each couple comes to you, they have you don't know if they're married. You don't know if they're married, so you shouldn't open a hotel. I'm not saying, I closed all my hotels when I heard that. Right? Okay, let's go. I'm not saying Allah is interesting. How far do we go? It's a question. L'choira, I don't know. Maybe it's too ready. The bed is mamish there at night. I don't know. Interesting idea. Whatever. I'm not paskening here, and I don't know. Right? Quick to the Mishnah. Oh, if it's accepted to mix wine with water with the wine to dilute, then you do that because it's accepted. How much? You ask how much the percentage? Says the Brayse, Tana lemechtzed l'shlish v'leravia. Depends. Half, third, quarter, depends what's normal. Don't do more than the norm, but whatever is normal, you're allowed to do because choshed mishpat is dynamic. Omaravu benagitos shonu. Even that is only okay when it's benagitos. When they mix them, when the mixture is still blends nicely, and then you can mix the water and the wine. But once the wine already has its own taste, to dilute the wine then is worse. Already wine you buy in the shop to dilute is worse than diluting it when it's still fermenting. I don't understand this, neither did my Helu Yechavrusa, because what do you mean? Depends on Negamokim. If Negamokim is to dilute it later, it should be okay. So I don't know what the Gemara says. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't give us any advice. I remain with a little bit of a question, and I'm open to hear all your questions. Anything you want to ask about life, death, philosophy, China, Turkey, you can ask. Have a great day, everybody on Zoom. Hatzlocho, brocho. No, it doesn't help to tell him. Because he's a liar. No, if I'm the barkeeper and I know each and every customer because I'm standing there, or me or my son or my daughter, then I tell each and every customer, I'm going to tell them this is diluted, this is diluted. But if I sell it to Yaron, the barkeeper from Tel Aviv, the pub guy, then he will not tell them. So even if I tell him that it's diluted, he'll sell it to them as if it's not diluted, and he'll lie. And I'm machshilim lifnei iver, because it's so tempting for the barkeeper to sell the nice diluted one as if it's pure. So I'm machshilim lifnei iver, like giving the guy cheeseburger. No, don't sell it to any barkeeper.